All right, welcome back. Today's class, it'll be a little bit shorter. Let's look over stuff, and I've got some stuff to talk to you about. But I know if you need to, the shape research, building those Google Slide documents. There's 3 previous recordings where I kind of go over it. There's like probably accumulated 45 minutes of just how to build those. Uh, Go back and watch. If you missed the first 3 classes, go back and watch. Like they're posted. These video lecture week 2 jumps right to YouTube. I take them out of this Blackboard so you can watch them separately. Like you put it on your phone, on your TV if you have YouTube hooked up to your TV or whatever. But you can watch it separately, work through it, pause it, start it, stop it, pause it. It's easier than the Blackboard system. So it is there, but it is in the Blackboard system as well. But I don't think I need to go over how to develop the research part. And you heard me talk a lot about the shapes and how important shapes are in design. I don't need to probably go over that again. What I want to concentrate on is I'll come back to the shape project a bit, and I'm going to come back to the design practice. I don't know if it's done. I don't always do it. And I thought today, like, oh, maybe I should run through some of the programs that you are going to use initially in graphic design, in the graphic design program, and in graphic design, and tell you a little bit more about them quickly. I'm not going to go through like a whole, like literally a couple minutes on each one, but I want to also let you know why we're doing what we're doing and these programs, and I never heard of it. Why do we use it? All that kind of stuff. First up, I guess the one for that we're using in the class is that Google Slides. Um, well, there's a program. Google Slides is PowerPoint. All right. That's all it is. It's a easier to use version of PowerPoint. Back in my old job, oh my God, we used PowerPoint and it was horrific. And this is, over a decade ago. Google Slides wasn't really rocking yet. But the idea that you can use Google Slides so easily now, and MATC gives you access to it, it just makes it easier to make these presentations. This is the only time you'll be using, I don't know, at least for me, because once you start doing presentations in 3rd semester, you're going to be using the proper design programs like InDesign or Illustrator. But for starting out, for just adding some photos, adding text, and then making a PDF, this is great. It saves it for you. It does a lot of stuff. It's good for what it does. It's for making presentations, and that's all it does. Can you fully design within it? Not with a lot of ease. And then so that's why we don't use it for design, but we use it for presentation. It's a great way to get a bunch of stuff together in multiple pages to share with me and other students and other people. That's why I use Google Slides. Again, this will be phased out, and then you'll start using the proper design programs, which I'll talk to you about in a little bit. But that's why I use that one. It's easy. It's easy. Anybody can do it. And I think a lot of you, okay, I can't say a lot of you. Some of you may have transitioned, in high school, doing presentations in PowerPoint or Google Slides. It's exactly the same. But I didn't want to introduce another program because PowerPoint is a paid program and Google Slides is a free. Next one up, Photoshop. Some of you have my Photoshop class. Some of you are in a different Photoshop class. That's okay. A lot of people come into the design world or come in as novices, or the general public just has this assumption that Photoshop is graphic design. Like, oh, you tell people you're a graphic designer and they're like, you use Photoshop. I know Photoshop. I can make some images. And you're like, yeah, okay. I use Photoshop, but barely. Photoshop is for photo correction and making great effects needed to be placed into a design of your choice. Some people argue this. I swear, I do not consider Photoshop a graphic design program per se. I don't go and say like, oh, a client needs a flyer. I'm not going to go into Photoshop and design a flyer. If the flyer has some imagery, or if the flyer has some, I want to make a cool title bar or something like that, I'll use Photoshop to create that one piece and then bring that piece into a proper design program. Photoshop is awesome, but it's the least used for me of all the programs. Because if I have a photo and I got the photo supplied by a client and I don't need to make adjustments to it, I just drop that right into the design. I don't need to open Photoshop for any reason. So Photoshop has its place, and it's really great to learn, and you can do some fantastic stuff. Image-wise, it's made for images. If you take the Photoshop class, I will teach you how to do some typesetting in it. But again, not for typesetting. It is meant for photo. It is called Photoshop. Like it's in its name. So you use it for what it's for. It used to be, I want to say like worse back in the day. Photoshop was taught sometimes in high school, but it was taught as a graphic design program. And then students would just get stuck and be like, oh, I know how to use Photoshop, so I'm just going to design everything in Photoshop, and I'm not going to use Illustrator or anything like that. And it showed, like it was kind of bad. So kind of know that, like Photoshop, you got to make photo stuff. You adjust photos, you do it in Photoshop. I have you do some advanced, composition stuff that I still would not even do in Photoshop. I would do the photos and then bring them into Illustrator. But we got to learn some of it. You got to learn it, got to know how to do it, because it is useful. It's for Photoshop, And I was like, here's my quick. I need a photo, and I gotta, if you're in my Photoshop class, like, oh, can you, in that photo that we sent you, can you make sure there's two girls? Oh yeah, sure. I got that down pat. Here you go. And then I put that over there, and she's over there, and I'd clean it up and then be like, okay, now that's the image they want. They approved it, and that goes in the flyer that they wanted produced. Like that's what Photoshop is for. Like, hey, we got this image. Can you adjust it? Make sure crop it, adjust the colors, make it look great. Yes, that's what Photoshop's for. And then you put it in. You'll learn a lot more, but again, Photoshop is its name, Photoshop. So don't jump to it. I don't think anybody really has anymore as of late. It's jumping in and being like, this is a design program. It's a Photoshop program. Now I'm having you dibble dabble in Illustrator. Illustrator is the, I want to say, number one design program used. It allows you to typeset. It allows you to do great effects. It allows you to, like, quote unquote, paint and draw. And you'll see the similarities in all of them. They all have layers. They all have palettes. They all have stuff. Like you can draw in Illustrator. You can use, precise pen tool movements in Illustrator. And this is the one where like you develop shapes and objects, quote unquote, illustrations for your work. It is like the workhorse of the design world. It's also great for quote unquote one-off designs. And what I mean by that is single pages. If I have like a single page flyer, I'll use Illustrator all day. I need a poster, Illustrator all day. I need, like this one thing, a one-page ad, Illustrator all day. And that's its strong point. And it has like all these fun things you can do and weird effects, but it is the number one tool. And I'm going to come back to Illustrator after I talk about the next program. But this is the one. I'm introducing it in this class for a reason, because you need to start somewhere. And maybe you're not in the Illustrator class yet, or maybe you are, but if I avoid using it, you're not going to use it. But if I just start to get you introduced to it, using it in my way and in these fun little projects that you do each week, you're going to get used to it, and it's not going to be quote unquote as scary. You're not going to revert to like what I used to know, which to me, everybody was just use Photoshop. Like, well, I used to know Photoshop. Yeah. Enough with that. So Illustrator to me is where it's at. It's got the most versatility. And like I said, in Illustrator, which you'll learn later on, then you do the Photoshop work and you bring the photo into Illustrator and then you work with it in there, and it's all good. We're rocking. We've got it done. So that is why for all those projects and 2 or 1 future project, you will be using Illustrator. No matter what. And I've had people take the class and not be an illustrator yet and still do just great. Because I'm not asking you to do a lot of technical stuff. It's usually a lot of like, bring this in and place it in and move this around, do some type, have some fun. So that's Illustrator. It's number 2, or number 1, but number 2 on our list. Third one is, which I introduced this week, is InDesign. InDesign is like the heavy hitter, multi-page document. You know, somebody asks for a catalog to be designed, anything that's more than like 2 pages, 3 pages, you use InDesign. InDesign is the most technical of the 3. People are always scared of InDesign. It's simply because InDesign, even though it does have a lot of the same freedoms that Illustrator has, it's not as maybe quote unquote intuitive, but man, InDesign rocks for page layout, rocks for getting things like, you know, page after page after page of designs that look good, and you can set up grids and have things match page to page, like multi-page stuff. InDesign is your best bet. It is a word publishing tool. I guess it would be like, this is the publishing tool that, like I said, it's the heaviest hitter. It is the one when you have a big project, you're going to go to InDesign. But like all the other ones, or what you should also know is they all work together. So in here, in what you see in InDesign, this background was created in Illustrator and then brought into InDesign. And if I scroll down here, you know, here, the background was created in Illustrator. The typesetting was done in InDesign and page layout. And these are images that were adjusted in Photoshop and then brought in. So all 3 components end up working together to help you create final designs. And that's how they're supposed to work. They're not generally always one-offs. This one does this one does another, and this one does. You work together. They work all together. And like almost all typesetting, you know, background Illustrator, all typesetting. I have more where there's like, oh, the image section. You know, like images were brought in. The background was Illustrator. The typesetting is done another one. You know, here again, images were from Photoshop, the typesetting and everything. So they work together as, you know, as 3, and you rarely just use one without the other. The most time you use, if it's only typesetting, it's very like low graphic, you just use Illustrator, or you use InDesign too, either one. But just kind of, you pick the program per what you're working on, and you'll develop those skills and know what to use when. I'm also going to force you into doing some work as well. They're all, you know, like I said, they're all laid out the same. This one is showing pages right now, but if I click right there, it shows my layers. You know, everyone's got layers. Everybody's got a toolbar on the left. Everybody's got the same sort of palette system or panel system. And if you're ever like the properties panel in InDesign and Illustrator, almost exactly the same. So it's not that hard to move around from one to the other. And when I'm having you work on stuff, I'll have you like, I'm trying to keep it really basic that you understand like, oh, layers are layers. You know, this is this. You can turn them on, you can lock them, all that kind of fun stuff. So as I introduce this, this is why we're introducing all three programs. Later on, and one I'm not showing you, you learn it in the third or fourth semester, is After Effects for motion graphics. I am not your person for that. I don't do motion graphics. I never have. I've never understood it. It's not been my strong point. We have another instructor who's ace at it, two actually, and they are the ones to go for. So that's why I'm not going to show it here. But you will mostly, I'm scrolling the wrong screen here, be hitting off on Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign for all your work. And that's an overview of like why are we doing it? Why are we seeing what we see, and how are we doing it? So now the other one I want to talk to you about, and I've talked about this in the past, is kind of playing around. We assign these assignments and I tell you what to do and, you know, find this and find that. I highly encourage you to, at other times, and if you can, if you do have a computer at home or a computer that you have the student subscription for, or if you have a laptop from MATC that has the programs on it, when you're sitting around and you're watching that movie or you're just hanging out and you have a little spare time, your kids are away for the weekend, then you play around and you just open, you know, or new, file new, doesn't matter what you open, and you hit create and you just start like go down the line. What does this do? You know, can I pull it? Can I drag it? How do I work this? What am I doing? And just start playing around and seeing what some tools do and some others don't. That did nothing. I don't even know what that tool does. Was I too quick? Oh, yeah, I don't use this tool. But, you know, like play around, have some fun. And guess what? When you're done, just delete it. We are not working in precious, and this leads on to my other thing. Nothing you're doing is precious. It's learning. There's used to be a sketchbook ideology of what students had sketchbook back in the day. Like the sketchbook was like a Bible, and they're like, oh my God, every drawing I do in my sketchbook needs to be perfect. And I'd be like, just tear a page out. And they'd be like, what? But it's precious. It's my sketchbook. Just tear a page out. You know, ruin it so you're not so, you know, worried about it. And then you can come in and you'll be like, I'm going to make some square. Like, how come these are all just rectangles? Oh, hold down shift. What if I hold down shift and option? Oh, it grows from the middle. What does this do? Oh, this is a weird, like, I just draw with that. Like, what does it do? And just kind of start playing around. What is that? What does that look like? Oh, if I hover over it, it says it's an eraser. Oh, I can just like erase stuff and it erases it. So feel free when you can to not just like do what you have to do, but practice. This is what your favorite music artist does when they're, you know, when they're hanging out. They practice. They're writing music. They're using like their free time to develop their skills. I know you're in school and you're like, oh, I got to work and school and I have kids and I got this. But like when you have that free time, like how bad do you want to watch that movie? You know, like maybe you should just screw around on this. Like this should kind of almost be like your new hobby. If you have a hobby, you're like, oh, I'm going to start making this my new hobby. I'm going to start screwing around. I'm going to start like, I want to make a fake logo for somebody. And you just got to type something out. Like, how do I type around a curve? Play around, have some fun. And then when you're done, just delete it. Don't save. Let it go. And you learn some stuff. You push some things around. Play around with that. So keep that in mind. And you know what? It is what I did too. Like back in the day when I was in college. I had a, you know, went to Maya. I had a group, like we were all illustrators, and we hung out at school. And when we weren't in class, we were hanging out in our like classroom studio, and we talked design, like we talked illustration, we walked illustration, we'd go to the libraries together, we'd research together. Like it was our lives. Like I made it my life. And then, I'd go home and part-time job still, I'd go work. But when I wasn't working, I was studying because I wanted to. And that was my life. Any time that was free was design based or talking to, or being surrounded by it. And it really helps. So the more you can do it, the better it is. If you're just doing it all last minute, it's going to be a bit of a struggle. So we go to this design practice. I'm just going to roll right into this one. This is that one. So I kind of quickly went over this. I think this is the quickest one I went over on Tuesday. So I want to do it. I downloaded the zip file. It's something we have to learn about. Zip files. We're always zipping files back and forth. And I'm going to go down. And it's in my downloads here. I'm going to open that. And like I said, for Mac, you just double click on it. For PCs, you right click on it. And here's the native file it's called. It's Jessica Walsh, INDD. INDD stands for InDesign. I don't know why they have a second D on it. Maybe somebody already had IND for something else. And then there's links. So your computer may say it's not linked. You need to find the files, but it shouldn't because of the way I did this. Now, we may run into problems with fonts that I talked to you about. I want to hear back. I haven't heard back from anybody that the fonts weren't registering right. And if you tell me, I will go in and correct them. But it's just kind of good to, again, play around. Now, it works like everything else. It opens up. Everything's on the side of the artboard. And I'm just going to hold down the space bar and then slide everything over and be like, oh, everything's there. Or you can zoom out and find everything. These shortcut keys and zooming in and zooming out, same in every program. Scrubby zoom. I can't see everything. It's all there. And then everything's got its own layer, just like it should. And so I'm going to work, and the best part is like work top down. Because if you put in the background, it's going to cover up everything. And so you work top down. And if you want, you can even like lock everything. So when you grab something, you're not mistakenly grabbing something else. Again, great way to learn about how to use layers. And then you can zoom in, zoom out. So I grabbed it as off the side, and I'm going to kind of like get this centered. And if you're having trouble, because it's like, oh, but it's so blurry and, oh, the size is off. What the fuck? Well, you get it as close as you can. I wonder if I adjusted this. You get it as close as you can. Something happened. And then I'll go down to the photo over and bring that up. And I'm going to lock it right in that. Because see that? I probably had it locked right there. All right. And then that's her photo, the body copy. And I'm just going down, and you move them in. And you'll realize, like, this isn't much different than all the other programs I've been using. I'm kind of comfortable. The examples, just pop them in. One at a time. And I'm not, at this point, you're not resizing anything. Next round, you start resizing stuff. And I'll get to that. But you can see, too, like, just like the Google Slides, when I start to bring this in, it starts showing, see those cyan lines come up? It starts showing like everything's equally spaced. Everything's perfectly in line. Like it does all that same information. So it's helping you, get everything down, and I do the background file and place that in. And then you look at it and you're like, oh, this is a clean, clear, nice design. Look what I created with the help of my instructor. And then you're going to save that and then export a PDF, and you'll be all done and set. So open this, work with it. You're just moving things around, and it works just like the other programs. So don't be shy is what I'm getting at. Finally, and I won't dribble on too much about this next one. Again, new shapes, create. Shapes and balance. Again, have some fun. You got a mirror. If I do 3 shapes. I want solid black shapes again. And work with those. So I drew my shape. It had a white outline and a black fill. Start to work with those, or come over to properties is a really great one here. Properties is probably the easiest to use. I'm going to hold that down and I'm going to make a circle. And again, to make a circle, I'm holding down shift. If I don't hold down shift, I can create an oval, but I want a perfect circle. And then I want a triangle. So I'm going to go to the polygon tool and I'm going to hold down shift. But like I showed earlier, you can do this slider up and down and see that plus minus comes, and then I go to 3. And so now I have a triangle. And then so if I want something that seems balanced, and then like, oh no, that's off the page. You can grab all 3, hold down shift, and make them smaller. And I'm going to make it even more precariously balanced. Let's do this. And I'm going to rotate this, but I'm going to hold down shift and see what it does. And it's not, I want it like a third. I'm going to call that good. I actually know it because I'm going to do this. And I'm always looking for those magenta lines to show up to help me out. And sometimes when you unclick, it goes away. But then you can just fix it. And then I'm going to put this. And again, I'm looking for, like, is there a lineup? How can I get it? And sometimes you let that go and you see that mark. That means I'm perfectly in center. And then if you want, you use your arrow keys to tap. And you can move that one little segment at a time. Try things out. The arrow keys, beautiful. So great. So like there's like, I'm going to call that balanced. Like that's balanced. It looks like it's a little precarious, but if I then copy and paste that, and that's a drag down, but I can literally copy and then go to this one and paste, and I have the same 3. But now this one, I'm going to make like, this is now falling. And this is like going to be, like, this is rolling off. So it kind of like went from balanced to no longer balanced. And it's just shapes. So play around, have some fun. You know, the more you practice, the better you get. If you rush through the assignments, you'll get what you get out of it. But if you spend some extra time when you have it, and I know time's tight, I understand, you'll just get better. It's all about playing around. Think about, I'm sorry to say it, that video game you love to play, you're really good at it because you play it for hours. Same thing with designing, same thing with learning these programs. All those apps on your phone, you know, that you're like, boom, beep, boop, boop, and you like throw up apps and you can do, you know, whatever you're doing. Why are you good at it? Because you play it all the time. You use that app all the time. This is the same. You're gonna get good at it if you do this all the time. So have some fun. Work on things. Practice, practice, practice. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can ask me. That's it. Thank you very much.